The faces say it all. One day after the bombings, Sri Lanka is a nation in shock. A few people have gathered in silence outside one of the churches targeted in the capital, St. Anthony's Shrine. Soldiers are standing guard in a city and a country now on edge. Heavy security is also in place at St. Sebastian's Church in Negombo, north of Colombo. One man here recounts how his family escaped the tragedy.
They heard the blast. They quickly ran away, took the vehicle and went away from the church because they were so afraid. They called me, same time they called me and asked me whether I am inside the church or no. They wanted to make sure, but that time I was another church.
But as the clean-up operation begins, some are asking if this is a disaster that could have been avoided. Reports suggest intelligence services may have been tipped off about the possibility of attacks, yet failed to act. The Prime Minister himself raised this question, while also vowing to prevent further violence.
While this goes on, we must also look into why adequate precautions were not taken in this respect. But first and foremost, we have to ensure that terrorism does not lift its head in Sri Lanka.
The first task, though, for security forces is to try to piece together who's responsible for the atrocity and for the terrible loss of so many lives.
Let's cross over now to Jamila Najmuddin in Colombo. She's the editor of News in Asia. Jamila, the death toll from the bombings has risen massively to 200, from 207 to 290. Can you tell us what's behind that sudden jump?
Hi. So basically, yes, the death toll does stand at 290 at the moment, but authorities are expecting the death toll to rise further today. Now, the numbers keep rising is because there are postmortems being conducted on those who have died, who are being brought in. And it is only after that postmortem is conducted that the bodies are being released and the figures are being amended. So this is why we are seeing a rise in figures at least every 1 hour to every 2 hours.
Now, you've been talking to some of the survivors at the hospital, I understand. What are you hearing from them?
Well, basically, the survivors are shocked. They are scared. Nobody expected something like this. One of the survivors who I spoke to, who was praying inside the church when one of the bombs was detonated, told me that they went on Sunday morning joyfully to the church. They were going to meet their relatives later on in the day, but suddenly there was a huge explosion and many of his relatives have died in the blast. So everybody is really shocked in Sri Lanka at the moment, and more than shocked, everybody is very, very scared.
Now, I'm told there were fresh warnings today about possible further attacks in Sri Lanka, including from foreign governments such as the United States. What are police saying about the possibility of further attacks?
Well, basically, the police have not ruled out the possibility of further attacks, but what they are saying is that they're hoping the worst is over. But there is a massive search operation ongoing in Colombo and in other parts of the country, and the police have successfully detonated a very big bomb which they found very close to the international airport last night. So search operations are ongoing. At the moment, they are unable to say that whether we are still under further threat.
Now, police have made numerous arrests in connection with this attack, but nobody's claimed responsibility. We're all wondering who's behind the attacks. Can you tell us anything about those who've been arrested?
Yes, so far 24 people have been arrested by the police, and what we are hearing is all 24 of them belong to a very fanatic Muslim organization. In fact, a Muslim minister just a short while ago addressing journalists said that these perpetrators belong to a gang and not to any organization. So what we are gathering at the moment is that most probably it's a local gang which is responsible for these attacks.
Jamila, thank you very much for bringing us up to date there. That was journalist Jamila Najmuddin. She's the editor of News in Asia and was talking to us from Colombo. Now, for more, let's also bring in Tyagi Ruan Pathirana. She's a South Asia regional researcher with Amnesty International and is based in Colombo. The government admits that there were warnings about such attacks several days before they occurred. Did they not take those warnings seriously?
So the PM last night has admitted that there has been some forewarning, but he has also said that it was not escalated to him. So what has to be understood is that we're in a coalition sort of government structure at the moment, where the president is from one party and most of the cabinet ministers are from the UNP. So the defense and the police portfolios are held by the president. So that could explain why there's not been communication between the two. That could explain to why there was no action taken about this.
Well, I'm sure there'll be many more questions raised about that question of why the government may not have acted. Now, Sri Lanka's Christian community appears to have been one target of Sunday's attacks, with the churches being attacked. What can you tell us about the ethno-religious fault lines in Sri Lanka that provide a context for this?
So in terms of context, so we've had a spate of attacks against minorities by a number of parties, and this stretches back decades. And even during the conflict as well, where we saw LTTE, which was a terrorist organization who used to terrorize the Buddhists as well as the Muslims during the conflict itself. And then even after that, after the war has ended, Buddhist extremists have also terrorized a lot of Muslim and Christian communities, especially the evangelicals. So this attack comes in this context, but what we're seeing now is unprecedented. We haven't seen this level of coordination and this scale of attack previously. No.
Talk more about the background here, because this is the worst violence that Sri Lanka has seen since the end of the Civil War 10 years ago. What's been the security situation leading up to these attacks?
So Sri Lanka embarked on a transitional justice trajectory from the point this government came into power. And there has been attempts to reconcile. There's been attempts to sort of try and reduce the military presence in the north, because it's been 10 years since the end of the war. But I think it's difficult to say at this point whether we need, any sort of increased security, because the issue seems to suggest that there has been intel and it's inaction that sort of caused this. And it's not a call for more sort of, restrictions on civil liberties.
Tyagi, thank you very much for talking with us. That was Tyagi Ruan Pathirana. She's a South Asia regional researcher with Amnesty International.